comes up. Good. And once again, welcome. You'll see my desktop here as we get started. Oops. And so we're here tonight, and just so you guys know the motivation of facilitating this presentation, the Caucus on the Spiritual and Art Education wanted to bring some content to its membership, and we had this idea of Thoughtful Thursdays, so integrating a routine of offering information during Thursday sessions, so live and recorded. So this will be sort of a trial period, so thank you all for being a part of that. And tonight we'll talk about regulation. So just so you guys know where I come from, and most of you guys know me. So I am an art educator by day. The class that I teach primarily is entitled Mindful Art. So I teach mindfulness and creativity, a course that I created pre-pandemic, post-doctoral research, in an effort to provide a space for students to flex their creativity and also gain an understanding of what mindfulness is. So paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. Regulation plays into that because that process can be regulating. And I was recently trained as a neurosequential model in education trainer, which integrates some of these concepts that also overlap with SEL. So that is sort of the premise for the evening, and we'll talk about creating as well. So if you don't have a notebook or a sketchbook close by, it will be helpful to have something to write or draw with as we explore tonight. Please feel free to unmute if you have any questions as well. And ooh. Okay, so we'll just take a moment as we settle in here. If you can, sit in a space that allows your feet to be flat on the floor. Sitting up tall in your chair or wherever you are, go ahead and roll your shoulders up towards your ears. Roll them back and let your shoulder blades slip down your back body. Bringing your chin to neutral once you do that, and feel lifted as if someone's pulling you up through the crown of your head. Resting your hands on your lap, palms facing up or palms facing down, whichever feels more comfortable for you in this moment. And then bringing your hands closer to your body so that your elbows may fall a bit more naturally. Release any tension that you might be holding in your jaw. Soften the space between your eyebrows. And just take a moment here to connect with your breath. If it's helpful to follow the visual that's on the screen, you may link your inhalation with the expansion of the circle, your exhalation with the contraction, or simply close your eyes or soften your gaze and bring awareness to your breath. Our breath can serve as an anchor, bringing us into the present moment, reminding us that we're here in this space. Wherever you are, complete 2 more breath cycles. And after the end of the second exhalation, returning to your natural breath. If you close your eyes, you might flutter them open. And we'll proceed. If you'd like to write anything down about what that felt like or anything you'd like to remember, you're welcome to pause and take some notes. So for me, regulation involves finding this space to pause. And this quote, while it is a misattribution to Viktor Frankl, I think it's really powerful. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So finding this space between stimulus and your response and knowing that you're in charge. And in my quest to find the true source of the quote, Rollo May did say in 1963, indeed, I would define mental health as the capacity to be aware of the gap between stimulus and response, together with the capacity to use this gap constructively, excuse me. So knowing that there is a space and that we have that time to pause between stimulus and response. And for us as educators, and I think everyone here tonight is in education, finding that space and not being reactive, but knowing that we do have that power to pause and respond in the way that we choose, that we are in control and we can construct that response. So tonight we'll define SEL. We'll talk about the benefits of art and SEL, the connections in the brain. We'll do a hand moving meditation, a body scan, and quick drawing. I'll talk about just teachers learning first, and we'll have some time for Q&A. And in the spirit of CSAE, I just wanted to offer the definition of spirituality. So CSAE defines spiritual as matters related to the spiritual or soul. This includes investigating the mysteries of life and beyond, self-realization, consciousness, rituals, well-being, and contemplative practices. So we'll explore several aspects of that tonight. And while teaching in a way that embraces spirituality does not mean teaching religion necessarily, but embracing well-being and contemplative practices in the art studio can be something that's really tangible for a lot of our educators. Oops. Anyway, thanks for your patience. So SEL. I wanted to offer the definition just because I think that Castle does it right. So social emotional learning, the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. That's a lot. And at the core, it's how to be human and how to connect with humans and ourselves. So SEL, fortunately or unfortunately, fills the gap where we as parents, we as educators fall short. So we're missing this component that perhaps once was more important in the world of education, or which happened naturally in classrooms. SEL does not necessarily need to be a curriculum, and it is non-political, non-religious, although there are proposed bills to ban and limit SEL in several states right now, perhaps some of the states that some of us are living and working in. SEL can happen in the classroom and then expand out to school, family, and community spaces. So the Castle tenets, if you're not aware, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So all of these components, we could take a deeper dive into, and there's a ton of information on, but even just by providing these definitions, these are things that we all need, our students need. And again, remembering that adults need this first before we can teach it to students. So the benefits of art and SEL, just noticing that there's an overlap. So when we look at SEL, self-awareness and self-management links pretty closely to the National Core Art Standard band of create and present. So we know, those of us that are in art education know that the National Core Art Standards, create, present, respond, and connect, we have a lot of gray area where we can really make those connections to just about anything. Give us a discipline, give us a specialty, give us a set of standards from math or ELA, and we can make those connections with those 4 bands pretty naturally. Just give me 5 minutes and we can make it happen. But when we look at SEL, I think that it carries over kind of seamlessly. When we're talking about social awareness and relationship skills, students are going to build that through the present and respond band. They're also going to build that through create, but we can almost carry that over in a horizontal line. Responsible decision making allows students to make those connections too. And again, that can happen in any of those bands of the National Core Art Standards, but in particular with that connection. So looking at the benefits of SEL, and again, this might be common knowledge for some of you, improve social and emotional skills, attitudes, relationships, academic performance, and perception of classroom and school climate. SEL does provide a decline in student anxiety, behavior issues, substance abuse, which is linked with a lot of mental health issues. long-term improvements in skills, attitudes, pro-social behavior, and academic performance. Teachers with strong SEL competencies are more likely to stay in the classroom longer and are less likely to burn out. Now, I'm a big proponent of, again, I'll talk about this at the end too, but teachers need to learn this content first, and some of our teachers need this a little bit more than others. So when you hear a teacher or a politician who doesn't quite understand why this is important, likely they don't have that understanding themselves. So if we're going to make that connection to the visual arts, you know, it's difficult for us to teach something that we don't have a full understanding on, because we can't suppose, or we can't ideate all of the issues that would come about when we haven't had experience with the material or a process. So I think that that's important for any content area, and including SEL. If teachers don't have a full understanding of that for themselves first, it's likely not going to translate very well into classroom instruction. All right. And then art as a vehicle for understanding. So again, in these places and spaces where folks are afraid to integrate SEL, art can serve as that vehicle. I mentioned, you know, in being trained as a neurosequential model in education trainer, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the brain section, but you know, art can be a vehicle for a lot of things, and that's why it makes a lot of sense to have this integration in a space that feels natural, if that feels natural for the teacher. So due to the overlap in tenets and standards, SEL can enhance the meaning making and skill building associated with art production. Art making can make the SEL tenets more tangible. So again, using that as a vehicle for understanding when and where it makes sense. Sorry, I keep going backwards here. And if you're not familiar with this particular tool, I have the link on the slide, and you'll get all the link to the presentation at the end here too. But this is produced by an organization out of New Jersey, where we have this very clear overlay of the National Core Art Standards. So create, present, respond, and connect. And then the interplay with the social and emotional learning competencies. So we see the SEL tenets and the direct connection with the bands of the National Core Art Standards. So this is a great piece that provides you with an easy way to make the connections. Like if you're looking to integrate SEL tenets on a lesson plan, or just to explore that further, this is an awesome website that is super easy to use. And I know that I've shared that with a couple of you. So this, again, I'm going to go further on the next slide. But you can take one of the tenets, such as self-management, and link it with one of the National Core Art Standards bands, such as create. And we can look at, you know, where that overlaps. We can see the elementary up to high school separated bands, where it tells you a little bit more about what that means for SEL. We get the enduring understandings and the essential questions that are linked with that. So the website is there, selarts.org. But this is an excellent tool, again, just to see where those the tenets and the standards directly overlap. And again, if you're experimenting or exploring the integration, it's a great space to start to do that. And for folks who are in, you know, an elementary classroom, this is a great tool where they can see where those art standards fit in as well. So this is, I think, just really useful for everyone. And here's just an example of how that, you know, expands if we're looking at high school self-management in particular, differentiating between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and learning how thoughts affect feelings and behaviors. Like this is just this is the stuff. So just a great resource that I hope that you guys will all enjoy. And I hope that this goes without saying, and I know that we've got a lot of art educators on the call tonight, the benefits of art making. So art can be a method of accessing flow states. So if we're going to link to Csikszentmihalyi, self-expression, rhythmic regulation. So when we talk about regulation and where that happens in their brain, the rhythm of art creation can really provide that for our students and for us as well. The opportunity for collaboration and understanding. Art is a mode of communication that fills the gaps that words cannot express. And we have that space to increase risk-taking, problem-solving, convergent and divergent thinking, accessing creativity. So, you know, we can go back to Eisner's 10 lessons the arts teach, but if you're not familiar with the benefits of art making, this is not an entirely comprehensive list, but a good place to start. So the connections in the brain. Now, I will say that I am not a neuroscientist, but this is an area of intense curiosity for me. So what's really peculiar when you talk to people about the brain, if you talk to psychologists, as opposed to or in addition to folks who are in the sciences, anatomy and physiology, everybody sort of has a different take and a different angle. And so when I started learning more about the brains through the neurosequential model in education, and the neurosequential model in education is a neurodevelopmentally informed, biologically respectful perspective on human development and functioning. And the model in education, as opposed to therapeutics, provides educators with this understanding basically of student behavior and student performance and the way the brain develops. So when we're looking at the brain, the cortex or the cortices are the outer layer, and we think of that as like the top of the brain. The limbic lobe, which is sort of a little bit more central, is also associated with the lower levels of the cortex or the allocortex. The prefrontal cortex becomes really important when we're talking about creativity and abstract thought. And within this area, we have the diencephalon, which is valid in the neurosequential model in education. The hypothalamus, the thalamus, and then the brain stem and the cerebellum, we think of that as the low brain. So that's where a lot of that like automatic regulation happens. So when we think about top down versus bottom up regulation, those of us who are artists know that there's not like a top and bottom to the brain. It's hard to see that here, but in general, we're thinking about the brain stem through the diencephalon, the limbic lobe, and then up to the cortex. So that's just so you have sort of like a visual understanding of what that means, what that looks like. And so the neurosequential model in education, again, looking at this upside down triangle, which is pretty standard for Dr. Bruce Perry. And I do have a link to his resources at the end of this slide. This is not a Bruce Perry copyrighted presentation, but this is a trainer slide. So when we're thinking about regulate, relate, and reason, we're talking about the diencephalon, the limbic system, and then the cortex. And if you notice this arrow at the top, again, we think a lot about top-down regulation in psychology. When someone is going through a therapeutic program, oftentimes it's top-down. So it's using thinking to regulate the rest of the body and the brain. And so we're learning that regulation can happen in a lot of different ways. Regulation can happen through relating, regulation can happen through rhythm, and that sometimes happens more in the low brain and works its way up. So it's sort of this like fluid flow, but we think about bottom up and then top down regulation. Regulate, relate, and reason. And so what's happening there, again, in the cerebellum and the diencephalon, what might happen, in the classroom, doodling, rhythmic painting, pattern making, coloring, art in general, music, that's where we're feeling routine and safe space. The limbic system, the connection there, we're talking about classroom critiques if we're in an art space, side-by-side creating. So working alongside someone, and us as adults, that's always a great time where we just have this open conversation, working side-by-side with your students, connecting with like-minded peers, adult mentorship, also that's active in the limbic system. And then in the cortex, that's where we have creative problem solving, planning, creating, analyzing, abstract thought, and creation. And so again, just sort of visualizing how NME, SEL, and the National Core Art Standards can be interwoven, right? We can almost look at it just horizontally across and make the connections. And then each of these tenets or standards or concepts can be woven in different ways as well. But when we think about regulation, that is pretty closely connected with self-awareness and self-management. creating, doodling, right? When we think about relating, again, that's in the limbic system. So we're talking about social awareness and relationship skills. Is that happening when we're presenting and responding? And then when we're reasoning, responsible decision making is the most closely connected with reason and then making those connections. So again, just understanding, I just think it's really neat when we're considering integrating these concepts into the classroom, NME, SEL, NCAS, all interwoven. So this is where it gets a little bit more complex. So creativity is happening in the hippocampus, abstract thought in the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex. So when the state is calm, when we're talking about state dependent functioning, cognition can be abstract. We're talking about the cortex. Considering abstract thought and creativity, both the cortex and the limbic system are open. So we're talking about creativity in the hippocampus, which is closer to the limbic system. Generation of creative ideas can be associated with the hippocampus, and the hippocampus, part of the limbic system, supports our ability to remember and also supports our ability to imagine and to create. The hippocampus is located in the allocortex technically, so the lower levels of the cortices, with neural projections into the neocortex. So we're linking that limbic system with the outer cortices, considering the enemy lens, but realize that these parts of the brain, there's projections everywhere. And so when we're thinking about wanting to identify where something specifically happens, it's really difficult because there's lots of things that are firing at the same time. And so to take it a little bit further, and I find this to be just really interesting. So the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex, two quite different types of cognitive ability have been associated with the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex. So the lateral parts of the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex appear to support the ability to detach oneself from the environment, so dissociation, and to elaborate, evaluate, and maintain abstract rules and information as it is involved in reasoning, problem solving, and more generally, abstract thinking. So the medial part of the rostrolateral prefrontal cortex is implicated in social cognition, and that's the understanding of other people's minds. So again, we have this connection with other people with the abstract thought. So these the limbic system and the cortex really like working together. So I just find that to be really fascinating that the further up we go towards the prefrontal cortex, cognition becomes more abstract. So I'll invite you to move here, and I'm going to stop the share so you'll be able to see me in a moment. If you're sitting in a chair, perfect. If you're more comfortable, like on a couch or a bed, excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a hand moving meditation. So we can regulate through movement without bringing in something like yoga, into a space. And oftentimes, students and adults aren't quite comfortable using breath as a form of regulation. So I'm just going to stop the share so you'll be able to see my hands fully. Okay. So again, finding just a comfortable seat. And this hand moving meditation, I learned when I was doing a mindfulness-based stress reduction training. It was a global platform, and there's a gentleman who was stationed in Japan, and this was something that was passed down traditionally through his family. So again, coming into a comfortable seat, whether you're on a chair, just feet flat on the floor, starting with your hands on your lap. You can notice your breath, but the beauty of this is that we can teach this to students or use this in the classroom or use this for ourselves without necessarily paying close attention to our breath. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with, and I wonder if I'll be able to mirror this. I'm going to start with my right hand. And you're going to take your right hand and place it almost like you're giving a karate chop to your lap, to your leg. So that's step one. And then step two is to bring that hand up to heart level. That's 2. 3 is bring your hand to your heart. And then we do that on the second side. So it's a chop to the leg. So it's perpendicular. 1, 2, 3. And then 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. And we'll continue. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Continue. And feel free to do one more round. And when that's complete, just notice how you feel. And if you'd like to add anything into the chat, questions or comments or any feedback, if that seemed attainable, accessible, if you can see how that rhythm could be used in the classroom. Again, a lot of NME strategies use rhythm to allow students just something, a way to remember, right? And so a lot of cross-body movement as well. There's a lot of like, patting on your lap, clap, snap, clap, and just to get a rhythm as you're remembering something. So just recognizing that can be a really powerful way to regulate and just reset. So I'm going to go back to the screen. This might be a little bit different here. Oh, pardon me. We'll share it a different way. Okay. And, oh, thanks for your patience. I'm a one screen presenter here. So when things start to get a little bit complicated. Cool. All right, thanks for sticking with me. And then if you are back in your seat, or if you're somewhere that you have access to paper and a pencil, I'll invite you to enjoy a body scan meditation here that will lead into a drawing. Okay, so there's no rules here. If you're listening to my voice and you want to just draw at any time, you can, but I'll guide you into drawing after scanning the body. So for this particular activity, again, you might be comfortable sitting on a floor or couch or bed, sitting with your shins crossed. But this is actually kind of nice to do seated in the classroom as well, just because, that's like the typical drawing posture, and you can sort of be a little bit more alert. So I'll cue you, and if you've never done a body scan before, I'm just going to identify different points, moving from your toes up to your head. Your only task is to notice, right? If you find pain or discomfort at any of the spaces that I mentioned, just send a breath just to see if you can soften or relax that space. And again, just moving from the toes up to the head, but we're gonna pause and draw when we get to the hands. So coming into a comfortable seat, feet flat on the floor, noticing where your seat is in your seat. Roll the shoulders up to your ears, roll them back, let your shoulder blades slip down, bringing your chin to neutral, releasing any tension that you're holding in your face. To start, you may keep your hands in your laps, palms up or palms down, hands close to the body, whatever feels better for you. And notice the quality of your breath right now. No need to change it or alter, just notice what it feels like to breathe. Know that you're here in this space. Nothing to do, nowhere to be but here. And we'll start by noticing the toes. You might even give your toes a wiggle. Notice temperature. You might even be able to notice the texture of, socks or slippers against your toes. Moving awareness through the soles of your feet towards your ankles. Just sensing, noticing nothing is okay. You might notice a buzzing sensation, again, just temperature. And then sweeping the awareness up through your shins to your kneecaps, your knee joints, and just seeing what's there. And continuing to sweep awareness up towards the hip joints. You might even give yourself sort of a wiggle in your seat to notice if you can sense the sitting bones grounding you down wherever you're sitting. Bringing that awareness up to your navel center, just right where your belly button is. Noticing, sensing, releasing, and again, noticing nothing is okay. And bringing that awareness up to your heart center. Again, just sensing, just noticing. And as we connect to that heart space in honor of Hanukkah, I'm just going to share a quote with you from Rabbi Berg. And if this resonates in this heart space, great, hold on to it. If not, let it go. A miracle is a natural result of miraculous changes within our own nature. I'll say that one more time while we're connecting to this heart space. A miracle is a natural result of a miraculous change within our own nature. And here, connecting with the space in the chest, begin to notice your breath here. Perhaps you're noticing the rise and fall of your rib cage, expansion, contraction. And sweep that awareness up to the hollow of the throat. Just notice, pause at that space. And then sweep awareness out to the shoulder joints. Down to the elbow joints. Wrist joints. And then noticing the hands, the tips of the fingers. Can you feel a buzzing sensation as the blood is flowing through your hands? Take a full breath here. See if you can feel your body breathing all the way from your lungs through your arms. Noticing that movement. And then picking up your pencil, your pen, any drawing tool that's close by. And you have an invitation here to close your eyes, just making sure that that drawing tool is making a connection with your notebook, your paper, your notepad. And here you just want to begin to feel the breath moving through your body and see what happens as you allow that breath to guide your hand and guide that drawing tool on the surface of your paper. And again, eyes can be closed or open, whatever feels more comfortable for you. Allowing the breath to guide the movement of your drawing tool. Following each inhale all the way in and each exhale all the way out. Perhaps noticing the sound of your drawing tool on the surface. Noticing what that pen or pencil feels like in your hand. Noticing the resistance. And still linking any marks, any movement of the drawing tool with your breath, with your body breathing. And we'll continue on in this way for just a few more breaths. Again, it's okay to close your eyes. And wherever you are, complete 3 more full breath cycles. If your eyes are closed, I'll encourage you to keep your eyes closed. And after you finish that 3rd exhalation, if you close your eyes, gently flutter them open as you notice what you have created on the paper. And just approach that with an energy of just curiosity, wondering, accepting, appreciating. And if you're like me, so this ended up being a little bit scribbly. I'll just kind of share there. I love drawing in this way because it sort of acts as a portrait of your breath. And I love going back and sort of reinforcing that with different tools and using that as a base for drawing. So I'll encourage you, if you are taking notes, just to notice how you feel, how that might have felt for you, and any ideas that you have about taking that further just for your own personal practice. And we'll talk a little bit about teachers learning first. So again, acknowledging that many of you are educators, and this may have been, a first in terms of just a body scan that leads to drawing meditation, but I know that a lot of you are well versed in sort of abstract approaches. And just some key points to notice. And again, I mentioned that if we're, especially in light of SEL, mindfulness, there's a few big topics or approaches or ways of being that I do think have value in the classroom. And I think it's really crucial to acknowledge that if an educator doesn't have a full understanding of the resources available to be able to teach in a way that supports their students fully, I think that there's always room for a pause, right? So if I'm going to teach about, SEL tenets, and we're going to talk about just even like self-awareness in terms of emotion, I want to make sure that I'm providing the support for my students who may be, triggered by that question or taking that deep dive into their emotional landscape. And I want to make sure that I'm providing the supports for those students to be able to seek assistance outside of my classroom. So having conversations with counselors so that the counselors know that I am integrating some of these ideas into the classroom, and then they know how to support. And fortunately, I work in a school where all of the counselors are very supportive of some of the abstract lessons that we're teaching through art, and we're able to have that open dialogue. So just a few really, really important things too. Again, when we're talking about regulation and the ways that we can regulate, a dysregulated adult can never regulate a dysregulated child. So if I am a teacher walking into a classroom and I have just, I've had a terrible morning and I didn't have time for my coffee and I got a flat tire and things are just not going well, and I'm bringing that energy into a space. And then I've got a student who also had a really bad morning. They didn't eat breakfast. They didn't have heat in their house, and they're coming in without a pencil, right? If I'm frustrated because they don't have a pencil and I don't have that space to pause and regulate myself before interacting with that student, there's no way that I can regulate that dysregulated child, right? Until I'm regulated myself. A dysregulated adult will dysregulate a regulated child. So if my student is having a really great day and my energy is something that one, they're particularly sensitive to, or that just, that they're an empath, that they absorb the energy in the room, there's a very high chance that my dysregulation is going to affect the regulated students in my space, right? And I think that that probably makes sense to a lot of you. Some teachers need to work on their own understanding and development of SEL tenets before guiding young learners. So we need to just acknowledge that there's a space for co-regulation. And again, if we want that to happen, the teachers need to, or teachers, any teacher, any educator, administrator needs to have that understanding and that do that work themselves first. And research is illuminating the need for adult SEL. There was just, Castle just posted an article, and I think I have it linked here as resources for you all, where, yeah, if adult SEL isn't an important focus, we're not going to do it right if we're integrating that into the classroom. Oops. Sorry, this has been a backwards night. My Canva is dysregulated. I did want to give you guys the space here too, and I will stop the share and end the recording. I do have this particular presentation linked on my DOT account. So there is a conference files Google Drive that you are welcome to access. There's also some other resources there too. So you can scan the QR code or just send me an email if you want to have a link to that. But I wanted to provide that for you here and give you a chance to scan and save on your phone my contact information if you wish to reach out with any questions beyond this presentation. And I'm going to stop the recording now to give you all the space to chat.